Hi, everybody. Dr. Steve Hassan here. It is Wednesday, June 18th. It's 3 p.m. Eastern Time, noon Pacific Time. Thanks for joining us. We're live on multiple platforms. And Tony, you're going to want to mute your thing so we don't hear you typing. Thanks, buddy. Where we have this live stream happening, and there's so many things happening in the world that I wanted to answer your questions. And so I'd like to start by just saying congratulations to the many millions of people who came out and protested at No King's Day on Saturday. Hey, Tony, can you mute, please? Thank you. Um, uh, check that out if you want. I was just basically recording the speakers that day. But there was an estimated 5 million Americans and people in 20 countries protesting. I've heard estimates up to 11 million people protesting, but it was absolutely fantastic. And I really hope that it will create momentum for folks to join hands, arms in our communities, and understand we're not alone, and that we're stronger if we're in big numbers. It's going to counter this authoritarian fascist move that's being pushed on us by the Trump administration. And so let's keep that going. I can honestly say that there's a lot of bad stuff happening too. Threats to, Senator Padilla, who was pushed out by force, thrown to the ground, and handcuffed when he wanted to ask a question of Kristi Noem. Just recently, a Democratic mayoral candidate, I think his name is Brad Lander, in New York, was manhandled because he was asking to see a court warrant. And so there's a lot of intimidation that's going out. The most scary thing that's happened was an assassin murdered a very prominent lawmaker in Minnesota, and her husband and two other people were shot by this guy who was dressed as a police officer, wearing a vest and a rubber mask, and has a vehicle that looked like an unmarked police vehicle. And he's now in custody. His name is Vance Belter. The media has been calling him Bolter, and I confess, me too, until I just literally got off recording an interview with a man who knew him 40 years ago, who was a freshman with Vance in 1985, and was describing how he was a funny kid and loved baseball, very talented, and he got recruited into Christ for the Nations, a William Branham cult group. And he's been on this journey of radicalization. But Jeff Patrica basically said he just changed, radical change. He became a religious fanatic. He suspected he was recruited into a cult. He didn't know which one. And we're just literally just finished the recording, so we'll be putting that up hopefully later today. If you haven't checked out my interview with John Collins, my friend and colleague who is third generation former William Branham cult member, his family was very high up in the message cult that Vance Belter was recruited into 40 years ago. So we did a very interesting video that's on my YouTube, and John Collins has it on his as well. And what I also want to say, I think I forgot to say after the No King's Day and the great turnout, was how Trump had his military parade in DC, which he wanted 200,000 people for, and now is claiming 250,000 people showed up. But the numbers were actually closer to 8,500 to 10,000. And there was a report that there was an ad in Craigslist to pay $1,000 for people to come to attend Trump's parade. And so it was a dismal failure. And then lastly, before we start asking for questions and letting me respond, there was a G7 meeting in Canada. And Trump arrives and starts lamenting how Putin should be there. And Trump apparently was unaware that it was called the G8, but Putin got kicked out because of his invasion of Ukraine. And so I can only tell you that Trump continues to embarrass any politician that knows history. He was also claiming, Trump said this in Canada, that Democratic cities won't be able to vote in the 2026 elections. News to us, but I can predict and count on him cheating in any way possible. And I just want to talk to my team who's helping me with this broadcast. On my screen, it's very pixelated, and to Tony, and I can't read what's on the screen because it's very pixelated. So we're going to need a workaround somehow. Maybe send me the questions in addition, if it's not pixelated on your end, to send it to me in our Signal chat, Tony, so I can read the questions, because it's unreadable. I see from Mitch Kale, but I can't read anything else. So I won't be able to respond to questions. Our usual live stream volunteer, Jerry, is off on vacation. So we are trying our best to do it this way. So I'll keep talking until we can figure out the messaging for questions for me to respond. And another option could be just reading the questions to me as it's on the screen, if it looks good to our listeners. I know that I have a good internet connection here in Northampton, so I don't know exactly what's going on. So let me just continue and say, Israel and Iran are at war, and missiles are flying. And I'll just comment that what isn't being reported in the media that I can hear is that Qatar and Saudi Arabia are helping shoot down missiles that Iran are sending to Israel in retaliation of their attack. And all the money that the Middle East Muslim, Sunni Muslim countries have given the Trump family, I'll say that. And for those my listeners who don't understand that there are two major factions in Islam, Sunni and Shiite, and Iran is Shiite and Saudi Arabia is Sunni, and they don't like each other. Each think that they are the true followers of Muhammad. Oh, I see the screen, the font's bigger. Let's see. This is what Trump wants. He wants to divide the country and put people in fear, along with RFK Jr. trashing public health, so the population is weakened and vulnerable. Yes, Mitch, you're absolutely right. Um, part of the strategy that Putin and Trump have been doing is an overload strategy. I should also add Bannon and Stephen Miller, etc. There's so many crazy things happening at the same time, and all normal people can't keep up with it. And we're in a mode where we're reacting to each crazy thing. And we need to like get our act together and understand it. We are at war. There is a coup in progress to destroy the United States of America and the separation of church and state and rule of law. And we need to develop a strategy for proactively teaching people how to understand undue influence and mind control. And Skeptic Goddess, what is the name of the cult again? William Branham, Branham, I believe. And go to my YouTube channel, not while I'm live streaming, but it's Dr. Stephen Hassan, and we have the video profiled, and I think we're going to have it on the front page of freedomofmind.com, my interview with John Collins about the shooter, Vance Belter. I mispronounced it in yesterday's video. And William Branham, I've done multiple interviews with John Collins over the years, explaining this cult, because William Branham was one of the original people who claimed to speak to God and get messages and do deliverance things. And John has been doing incredible amounts of research. He's brilliant. His most recent book, I'm going to hold up. I just ordered it and it just came. It's called Weaponized Religion from Christian Identity to the NAR, meaning the New Apostolic Reformation, which I wrote about in the Cult of Trump as the single biggest network of Trump true believers in the Cult of Trump. And media has been mischaracterizing them as evangelical Christians or conservative Christians. They've been saying this about the shooter as well. These are mind control cults where the leader claims to speak to God and does faith healings and does deliverances and etc. And they operate with behavior, information, thought, and emotional control to make members believe they're spiritual warriors against the evil, demonic Democrats and liberals. Um, so this guy, Vance Belter, was radicalized in 1985, and he, I'm sure, believed that he was directed by God to murder. And this is completely against the Gospels. And that was Jeff, the man who knew Vance back 40 years ago as a Christian, and was saying this is not what the teachings of the Gospels are all about at all. Sandra says, Americans live from election to election. Does any education occur in between? This is one of our positives and negatives of democracy. The goal of having term limits where people have to be reelected was supposed to eliminate the centralization of power. The founders of America did not want a king, did not want a dictator. And so elections and the electoral college, etc., was set up. However, what it's become, and it's been completely corrupted by money and by influence, is that politicians need donors to help run their next election as soon as they get elected. There's no long-term planning. People like Xi of China, a total authoritarian dictatorship, they can plan for 20 years or 30 years and execute a long-term plan. And we are not able to do that. And it's a real failing right now. And Russia, China, and other authoritarians are taking advantage of that weakness and the systematic dismantling of our checks and balances. And if you haven't noticed, the media is not bringing on mental health experts to describe how to stay sane, to explain how emotions are being manipulated on social media. So there's a lot of independent journalists, and now a lot of us are on Substack and have podcasts like I have, to explain to those who are willing to listen. But what's missing in the United States right now are sophisticated social media platforms with actual ethical guidelines aimed at the public good and not just aimed at expanding profits. And before I read the next question, I'll add that I just finished a book by a Facebook whistleblower, Sarah Wynne Williams, who wrote the book Careless People. And towards the end of the book, she described in detail how Zuckerberg doesn't care. He's so wealthy, he's so powerful. He wanted to run for president of the United States, she described at one point. But the Trump campaign with Brad Pascal hacked hundreds of millions of Americans' minds to get Trump elected in the 2016 election. They had teams and they were targeting people with their personalized data to motivate them to vote for Trump, even if they weren't Republicans or interested at all in supporting the GOP agenda. So as we move forward, people are going to need to pick a few trustworthy sources for information. But I've been hearing more and more the recommendation that people should pick one thing that they're passionate about and put most of their energy and attention on that one thing, which could be women's rights or children's rights or gay rights or trans rights. By the way, there was an excellent interview on the Ezra Klein podcast. Some of his guests are people I don't like that he even interviewed, but it's his podcast. But he had a congresswoman from Delaware, Sarah McBride, on, who's the only elected federal official who's trans. And I was just so impressed with her and her perspective, and couldn't agree more with how she was talking about social change and how the trans movement overstepped their boundaries and was trying to push a very extreme agenda on people who did not want their agenda pushed on them. And it's very interesting. I recommend it. Let's see if I can decipher this next thing that's on the screen from PMF. Could psychology experts provide realistic guidelines to increase national support group effectiveness? I ask because some people in blue states don't believe how severe things are now in the South. I'm not sure. I wish I had a billionaire step up and offer the resources and tools and the connections to be able to do a nationwide messaging program. I know a lot of top mental health experts, including Bandy X. Lee, a forensic psychiatrist who was the editor of The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump, which was a New York Times best-selling book that had 27 mental health experts saying how dangerous Trump was when he was first elected. She later did another edition with 37, and then later did another edition, the most dangerous case of Donald Trump. But the media has largely censored her and me and others. In her case, the American Psychiatric Association, which she's not even a member of, she is a psychiatrist, but it's a private organization. We're telling the media that she's violating the Goldwater Rule, which was a thing that was passed by the American Psychiatric Association, saying that people shouldn't diagnose public officials and politicians. But she said, I'm an expert in dangerousness, and we don't do sit down interviews with people who say things like, I could be in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot someone and my followers will still follow me. She said things like that already indicate a pathological mind, a lack of conscience, a lack of respect for others. So in any case, also, I'll just say there's been a psychological warfare tactic called fourth generation warfare that attacks experts, science, and democratic institutions. And by putting people like RFK in the highest position of the country, who's dismissed all the top vaccine and pandemic experts and put deniers in place, it's guaranteed to cause irreparable harm, potentially for millions of people, not only in the US, but around the world, by defunding the weather service and other critical infrastructure for the public safety. What's happening is people are going to be in greater and greater danger as time goes on. Oh, and before I answer Focus Lady, I just want to say what is happening right now in Washington is the Senate GOP is trying to push a bill to expand the national deficit by over $3.4 trillion by giving tax breaks to the wealthy. And they want to defund Medicaid and go after Medicare and go after Social Security. They want to defund the police. And so all of these world events are distracting people from going to their GOP politicians, especially if they're constituents, and bombarding them day after day after day that they were promised that Trump wouldn't touch Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, and let's keep the pressure on them. And maybe we can get a few of them to act with conscience, to vote not what they're told to vote by Trump and the GOP, but vote for the best interests of their constituents and for Americans. Okay, thanks, Focus Lady, for being patient. How can cult members be de-escalated from calling the police and ICE on innocent people? How can cult members be de-escalated from calling police and ICE on innocent people? Well, I don't think that there is a way of doing that without helping them to reality test and get out of the cult. I wrote a book, Freedom of Mind, on how to interact effectively with people in cults, and it's by being warm, respectful, not agreeing with them necessarily, but really listening to them and asking questions really listening to their answers and asking more questions and giving them a long silence to think about their answers. And the key is, when you're in a mind control cult, you don't think you're in a cult. You don't think you've been brainwashed, but you think other groups are cults and other people have been brainwashed. So the secret, and it's not a secret because I've been talking about it publicly for 49 years and writing books about the topic, talk about Chinese communist brainwashing and what are the methods, what are the principles. And let's also talk about pimps and traffickers and how they recruit and indoctrinate people to become slaves, because we know trafficking is illegal around the world. So if my team is listening to me, my screen on my Mac is still very pixelated, and it's very hard to read any words. I hope that all of my audience are seeing a clear picture. I know I have an HD Logitech camera, but what I'm seeing looks lousy. Um, let's see. Dr. Hassan, are you speaking to people in power to help them understand the cult of Trump? I wish. Um, how do I reach them? Please let me know. This isn't politics as usual, and I fear too many people in leadership keep acting as if it is. Um, the only person in politics that ever sat down with me and asked me questions and took me seriously was Jamie Raskin, who was on the January 6th committee, a former constitutional law professor before he became a congressman from Maryland. And Jamie Raskin says he read 3 of my books, including The Cult of Trump, as well as my doctoral dissertation. And years ago, I said to him, and this was back with Ginny Thomas and QAnon and predictions that Joe Biden was arrested. That was before Trump started saying he was dead and a clone had taken over for Biden. Oh my God. Anyway, and I said to Jamie, like, convene congressional hearings. I could get great people for a panel. We can talk about QAnon as a psyop, explain brainwashing, explain how to protect yourself from getting brainwashed, how to talk to people. And Jamie said, I'll talk to my caucus. And nothing happened. Jamie did invite me to speak to his Democracy Summer interns 2 years in a row. But other than that, I don't have anybody in power that has come to me, and I honestly wish I had access to influencers and people of wealth, because I have a lot of great ideas that are based in human rights, that are legal, and mobilizing former members to share their stories. Oh, and I should say that one influencer that I just adore is a woman who was raised in an alt-right, extremist Christian cultic group, went to Liberty University, and her name is Monty Mader. She has 1.1 million followers on Instagram, and she just released a podcast interview she did with me. I'm sure the video will be coming out soon. And I interviewed her, and we're planning to put that out in a couple of weeks. And this last time I said, Monty, let's do an Instagram live together. And she said, definitely. So stay tuned. But she's got over a million followers. I'm up to 152,000. But I'm hoping some of the million are big shots and people who have connections in Hollywood and in politics. But fingers crossed. But I continue to do these lives because I'm hoping that more people will come to understand my work as a former Moonie, as a mental health professional, and an authority on the topic of brainwashing and de-radicalization. Let's see. Again, I'm having trouble reading. The Trump regime is behaving like the Soviets in decline. It's insane. Good point. So I want you to understand Vladimir Putin was raised in an authoritarian political cult called the Soviet Union. And he got into the KGB. And when the Soviet Union fell, he was decimated. And he blamed the United States of America. And he and his former KGB cronies who took over the former Soviet Unions, and many of them became oligarchs because they split up the resources of Russia, so they could each be billionaires. They decided they want to do a plan to destroy the United States of America. And as I wrote in The Cult of Trump in 2019, and the book was re-released in 2024, this is the new edition with my PhD after my name, and forward by George Conway. I said Putin recruited, not Putin, but Russia recruited Donald Trump as an asset, not an agent, but as an asset in 1987. And after Trump came back from Russia, his first trip there, he took out a full-page ad critical of NATO. And when Trump just went to Canada, the first thing he was saying is, Putin is upset and Putin should be there. Like, when are people going to wake up and realize that Russia has been taking us over and wanting to make America like Russia? And Americans were not raised in an authoritarian cult like Putin was raised. We expect freedoms. We expect due process. And so I think, we really need to bear down on our experience as people who believe in rule of law and separation of powers, and really get upset. We want to keep peacefully demonstrating. We don't want to give excuses for more militarizations like Trump tried to do in Southern California with the National Guard without Governor Newsom's request at all, or the Marines. We don't want to give them an excuse to speed up the militarization and the move to fascism. Let's see, from Instagram. Again, I'm having trouble reading. When you have a moment, and now it's really bad. I'm a mental health counselor. My colleagues and I are having difficulty knowing what to say to clients who come in and want to talk about the political climate, also feeling defeated as well. This is real, and I'll just say I've been helping develop and train clinicians for many years. I have an online course for clinicians, for psychiatrists, CMEs, psychologists, social workers, mental health counselors. You can get credit. It's 9 hours and a little bit more to know the foundations. But if you know the foundations, if you've read my books, what I would start with my clients, if I were you, is acknowledging their feelings and feeling defeated, and explain that in times of great historical pressure and threat, we have 4 basic human responses. We can fight, we can flee, we can freeze, or we can fawn. And fawning is giving over to the cult and doing what they want. being numb or just tuning out and pretending it's not there is not it's a good short-term strategy if you're feeling overwhelmed, but not a good long-term strategy. You can run away, but we're on the same planet, people. And authoritarianism is global. It's not just here. I think the only option is to fight. And when I say fight, I don't mean violently. I mean resist actively. Don't comply in advance. So it would be encouraging people to pick something that they can do, whether they write songs or they write poetry or they have circles of friends to influence. And everybody at this point, it seems, in the United States knows somebody who still is in the cult of Trump, who still thinks that Trump won the 2020 election or that January 6th wasn't a violent attempt at a coup to prevent the transfer of power. Start warmly learning how to interact with them, because we will be able to get millions of people out of the cult of Trump. With every passing day, more and more people are getting disillusioned. And especially if they start losing their health care when they were promised it would be protected, just like Latina people who were supporting Trump and thought they would only go after criminals who were undocumented. Now their friends and their family are getting picked up and are living in terror. And they're like, they promised not to do this. So they're getting disillusioned. And what we want to do is welcome them and and build very broad coalitions of people and stop this all or nothing, black and white, us versus them crap that people have to agree 100% with any position, otherwise you'll cancel them. And we recently published an updated article on why I'm against cancel culture completely, whether it's done on the left or whether it's done on the right. It's just not how human beings can coexist in a complex world. We need to compromise. We need to live together. We need to have a positive future orientation for what can we do, what's within our power to do. Focus on this, not obsess on everything that's outside of our ability to influence. And make sure your clients are sleeping 7 to 9 hours, they're eating properly, they're exercising, and they're not on their phones 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours a day. Tell your clients to turn off their phones at least an hour or two before they go to sleep, to even like put it on airplane mode, even put it in a Faraday bag. I don't know if you know, but your phones are still on even when you turn them off, which is another scary prospect. Um, so I can go on, but I welcome you if you're a mental health professional. Take my course. Oh, and I have a short bite model of authoritarian control course that we were created, and I would urge people, we made it very inexpensive to get it and share it with family and loved ones. Have them sit down and watch it with you. It's not that long. I think it's an hour. But I go over the critical pieces of the bite model. And also we're trademarked the bite model of authoritarian control. So it's important that people uh, take the course, purchase it, and that will help us. Let's see. And of course, we're building out our YouTube channel, and we've started posting video interviews a week in advance for members only. And of course, on Substack, we're asking for $5 a month to read all of our incredible blogs that have been developed over many, many years. Let's see, Rhonda Wilson. I read an article once saying the professions that have the most psychopaths and sociopaths are politicians and CEOs. Explains a lot. I don't know if that's been confirmed, but I can say that one of the most important elements of a narcissist is a lack of empathy, the ability to step into someone else's shoes and feel for them and have compassion and empathy for them. So, and this whole culture that we've evolved with market capitalism here that emphasizes glitter and status and such. You can buy a nice watch or a nice car. It will make you happy for a few days or maybe weeks. But what really makes people fulfilled is helping other people. Like, that's well documented. Being in relationship. And I don't mean being online and having followers. I mean like having real life people that you can go to dinner with and not have phones out and just interact and have genuine human contact. Myself, I'm a hugger. Like, I like the body contact for people who are willing to hug me. It makes me feel grounded. I see from Instagram, Mitch Kale says, I took Dr. Hassan's Introduction to Cults course. I'm a mental health professional. I highly recommend taking it. Thank you, Mitch, for the plug. And yes, we really want, by the way, do you know there's not a single university in the world teaching clinicians how to work with clients who are born in authoritarian dictatorships or cults or religious extremist groups or people recruited in to these groups? So I created this course and it's groundbreaking. And I've had psychiatrists and psychologists who've taken it who just say this, I never knew these things. Um, so and I have so many more courses I want to teach because, hey, I'm not getting any younger and I want to transmit my knowledge to help the biggest audience I can possibly help. And so all I can say is I'm grateful to my team at Freedom of Mind who are busy editing videos for me, helping me with blogs, helping me. I do a blog for Psychology Today. We're running a new study as a fielding fellow for the Institute for Social Innovation. We have a 40-question survey where you can get a number on the influence continuum right now on bytemodel.com. And soon we're going to be adding a 20-question a survey because this 20 questions is scientifically validated elements of the bite model that we believe will hold up in any court of law, any challenge whatsoever, and we want to test that out. So if you haven't already subscribed to our newsletter, please do. Shannon says, could you please give a brief description of Chinese communist methods? Sure. So, but let me just first say what helped me get out of the Moonies was Robert J. Lifton's seminal book called Thought Reform and the Psychology of Totalism, a study of brainwashing in China. It was published in 1961. And in chapter 22, called Ideological Totalism, he outlined 8 criteria that any environment may be judged as a brainwashing environment. And I'll mention them in a minute, but I want to say that was printed in 1961. Lifton has since gone on to write a book about apocalyptic cults called Destroying the World to Save It. And he focused on a Japanese sarin gas cult, Om Shinrikyo, a group that I know very well. In fact, 60 Minutes flew me to Japan when the sarin gas attack happened 20 years ago. But he applied these 8 criteria to the Om Shinrikyo cult. But what are the methods used by Chinese communists now? It's high tech. They're surveying everybody. They're monitoring with cameras. They're even collecting DNA. They do have brainwashing facilities where they're putting Uyghur Muslims and Christians and other people to make them good Chinese. So the methods have morphed to far more online, digital, AI oriented levels, and Facebook collaborated with Chinese authoritarianism. That's another thing I learned from reading Sarah Wynne Williams' book. So those 8 criteria, things like milieu control, control of environment, loaded language. Words are the tools we use to think. So they're brief, platitudinous buzzwords that stop thinking, like fake news, for example. Mystical manipulation, creating experiences where people believe the leadership are divine and have powers, even if it's not a religious group. The sacred science, claiming to be the truth with a capital T, that it's scientific even when it isn't, but it also conveys the ideology. Demand for purity, cult of confession, dispensing. So, and go to my Substack, put in Lifton, and I have a whole blog in his own writing, a summary of the 8 criteria. Let's see. From Instagram, Raymond asks, can you tell us more about Belter's cult? So Vance Belter was recruited into a cult called Christ for the Nations, which is related to the William Branham cult. And the William Branham cult was back into the 1920s, and William Branham was involved with Roy Davis of the KKK, was political and racist at its core. But the thing about Branham was he talked about how he was receiving messages from God and how he could do deliverance ministries. And out of Branhamism, all the latter rain movement and all of this New Apostolic Reformation groups, which have an estimated 900 million people worldwide in them, this is not Christianity as we know from the Bible. These are self-professed prophets who say they speak to God, and they do authoritarian brainwashing, a la my bite model: behavior control, information control, thought control, and emotional control. So Belter got he was radicalized according to his college buddy, who was a baseball buddy. He went from a funny, regular 18-year-old who liked to talk about girls and baseball, etc., to becoming a religious fanatic and telling everyone they're going to hell and giving up all of his possessions, including his baseball bat. And he was very good at baseball, by the way. And now we see him as an assassin. I think he surrendered. I don't know if he's confessed. So we have to say alleged assassin. But we believe that he morphed into one of the New Apostolic Reformation cults, and had or maybe he was getting channeled himself from what he believed was God telling him to murder Democrats. Please go to my YouTube channel and watch the video I did with John Collins. John is an expert on the William Branham cult. I held up his newest book, Weaponized Religion, From Christian Identity to the New Apostolic Reformation. What a great ex-member, and he's helped so many people. Want to thank Nancy for her super chat, $10. Appreciate you, Nancy. Honestly, the more funding we can get, the more reach we can do. I've been funding everything myself from my consultation fees, and it's limiting my reach, unfortunately. And love to partner with a nonprofit that has funding, that can get grants. Love to work with media specialists who know how to do great messaging, because we're in a psychological warfare mode, and we really have to stop just reacting, and we need to get some solid, concrete messaging down. Like, for example, I think most Americans, if they understood Trump's relationship to Russia, and that Putin wants to make America like Russia is now, they would, so many more people would leave believing in Trump. If more Christians who know the Bible spoke out to these NAR people and quoted scripture to them in a heartfelt way using my methods, I think we could help millions of people get out of the cult of Trump. Let's see, Deborah Hussey, hi, just started listening to you. Welcome. Thanks for all that you do. Why does it seem that Trump is so different now than he was in office before? Well, first of all, Trump's 79, and his mental deterioration is getting more and more extreme. But what people don't understand is that Trump has influencers like Putin, like other people. I know he got an offer of a $400 million plane from Qatar, and his son-in-law got $2 billion, I think, from Saudi Arabia. What people don't understand is that they got methodical about how to take advantage this time, where they weren't ready and didn't believe he was going to win in 2016. So I interviewed Gareth Gore about his fine book on Opus Dei, which is a Catholic cult, authoritarian cult that I wrote about in The Cult of Trump. And Gareth says that the man who's head of Heritage Foundation's Project 2025 is Opus Dei. And they wrote this entire list of what they were going to do if they got Trump into the White House. And so they've been going through the list of dismantling all of the initiatives the Bidens have done, and how to systematically, well, they put in Musk to steal our personal data. Peter Thiel, who owns Palantir, who put Vance as the vice president. All of this data is now supposedly now going to get centralized, like China is centralized around every citizen. Everything you as a citizen has done online is going to get centralized. Every like, every dislike, what you eat for food, what you drive as a car, whether you're divorced, whether you did any searches for alcoholism or anxiety or suicide prevention, all that's going to get aggregated into a profile, and AI will be used to figure out how to manipulate you. And there's nothing we can do about it now, because we never got privacy, data privacy in the United States. So we just need to be that much more vigilant to protect our minds from influence, especially what's coming at us from social media and the media. And if you don't know the settings on your phones, learn about it. Go to Electronic Frontier Foundation. They can tell you what settings to turn off, because people have Alexa, they have all these settings, and all of this is getting surveilled and uploaded to the cloud. And it's not a joke. This is really serious stuff. Okay, let's see. Nancy, are you or anyone writing a guide on specifically re-engaging disillusioned MAGAs? It seems that something very short and basic would be more likely to be read by large numbers of people today. Nancy, you nailed me. I started writing a guide a few weeks ago, then I got really sick and I've been distracted. I'm working on a Spanish edition of Combating Cult Mind Control, and I really need to just, put things aside and finish the guidebook on how to talk to people in MAGA. So thank you for that push. And all I can say is I wish I had doubles and clones who can do all these projects that are so needed to be done. I also would like to do a video course and have ex-MAGA people role play with me, and they can pretend that they're still in MAGA, and I can demonstrate how I would talk with them in a way that would provoke reality testing. You see, what works isn't trying to persuade the person with facts or logic. The idea is to empower the person to reality test for themselves whether or not they're involved with something they want to be involved with, what they chose to be involved with. And because brainwashing doesn't erase who the person was before they got radicalized. And who are the most effective people to help? Potentially, it's family and friends, people you grew up with. However, most people who saw a loved one get radicalized into the cult of Trump tried to argue rationally, got fed up, and gave up and blocked, muted, stopped inviting for holidays people in MAGA, which only deepens their involvement, as opposed to what works is love and interest and curiosity and warmth. And the more contact cult members have with outside people who are caring and responsible and reactive to them, the faster they're going to exit. I also want to make an appeal. If you are listening to this and you are an ex-Jehovah's Witness or an ex-Mormon, or you were involved with the Assemblies of God, or any number of cults, an ex-Scientologist, ex-Nexium, ex-Children of God, your story could help someone in MAGA get free. Your story, if you share it in a heartfelt way and explain it by hitting on the BITE principles, will help give people tools where they can begin to reality test. I'm looking at the clock and we're almost out of time. It went so fast. All I can say is I think this is valuable for me to do live streams. I'm going to try to do an Instagram live or a Substack live or both. And if you know an influencer, a celebrity, someone with financial resources and clout that's worried about what's happening in America, please turn them on to my work. I have a doctoral dissertation that's on freedomofmind.com. Please sign up for the Bite Model of Authoritarian Control course, which I think is an hour and very inexpensive. Take my longer course if you can. And when people ask me, which of your books should I read first? If you're asking my opinion, I say Combating Cult Mind Control, because it's the foundational book. Then Freedom of Mind, that's my manual for how to help people get out of cults. And The Cult of Trump. Oh, and I have a workbook called Understanding Cults. That's the latest publication we have. It's a workbook that goes along with the course, but it's also a standalone that links to a lot of my blogs and videos. So, but I recommend Combating Freedom of Mind, Cult of Trump. But I can honestly tell you, most people just go right for Cult of Trump and then work their way backwards. But it's your life, it's your mind. Do what works for you. Remember, freedom of mind. It's your mind, and only you should control it. And I want to thank my team for stepping up and helping me do the live today. Take care.